Okay, today we have 3 panels of witnesses, and on the first panel we have 2 members of Congress, the Honorable Trent Franks of Arizona and Mr. Jim Langevin of Rhode Island. We appreciate both of you being here very much, and Mr. Franks, I'll recognize you for a 5-minute opening statement.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to you, sir, and to Chairman, to Ranking Ms. Rush and Waxman, and the rest of the fellow members here on the committee. I believe the subject of today's hearing is one of profound implication and importance to Western civilization, and consequently I hope the members will feel inclined to read my written testimony. And I just thank you again for allowing me to testify here today. Mr. Chairman, in our technological advancement, we've now captured the electron and transported its utility into nearly every business, home, and industrial endeavor throughout the civilized world. In so doing, we've advanced our standard of living and productivity beyond dreams. But we've also grown profoundly dependent upon electricity and its many accoutrements. In keeping with one of humanity's most reliable hallmarks, we now find among our greatest strengths an unsettling vulnerability to EMP or electromagnetic pulse. The effects of geomagnetic storms and electromagnetic pulses on electric infrastructure are well documented, with nearly every space weather and EMP expert recognizing the dramatic disruptions and cataclysmic collapses these pulses can bring to electric grids. In 2008, the EMP Commission testified before the Armed Services Committee, of which I am a member, that the U.S. society and economy are so critically dependent upon the availability of electricity that a significant collapse of the grid precipitated by a major natural or man-made EMP event could result in catastrophic civilian casualties. This conclusion is echoed by separate reports recently compiled by the DoD, DHS, DOE, and the National Academy of Sciences, along with various other government agencies and independent researchers. All of them, Mr. Chairman, came to very similar conclusions. The sobering reality is that this vulnerability, if left unaddressed, could have grave, societal-altering consequences. Now, like many of you, I believe federal regulation should be very limited. However, our first national priority is national security. And to protect our national security, we must protect our major transformers from cascading destruction. To that end, I've introduced the SHIELD Act, which differs primarily from your discussion draft in 3 critical areas. Unlike the GRID Act, which I commend this committee deeply for passing last year, the SHIELD Act authorizes FERC to promulgate standards necessary to protect our electric infrastructure against both natural and man-made electromagnetic pulse events if the standards developed by the ERO are inadequate to protect national security. The SHIELD Act additionally requires automated hardware-based solutions rather than procedural and operational safety measures alone. And the SHIELD Act does not contain cybersecurity provisions, leaving the conflicting approaches to that extremely important issue among the members of the Senate in particular to be debated in a separate bill. I met with Senator Murkowski and others there in the chamber, and the big challenge was that they had differing strategies on what should be done about cybersecurity. Now, let me make it so desperately clear here. I believe that cybersecurity is a critically important issue, and I think I would find myself largely in Mr. Langevin's camp on that issue. But the problem is the personalities there had a little different strategies on how to address it, and I'm trying to maintain protocol here, Mr. Chairman. They couldn't get together on that, and that's why that we felt like the issue should be separated, not because that one is more important than the other per se, but because I just think it's going to be especially difficult. That's complicated this year. As you know, the White House just a few weeks ago, probably what you were talking about with Mr. Langevin, released a legislative proposal for nationwide cross-sector cybersecurity efforts, and the Senate is working to produce a goal to meet those needs. And my concern is that if we tie them together, we may weaken both of them, because there's very little disagreement on the EMP aspects of it. The senators were very supportive of being able to protect the grid itself, just had some very seriously differing approaches to the cybersecurity element of it. Automated hardware, Mr. Chairman, is particularly important when one considers the shortcomings of procedural and operational safety measures alone in response to an EMP event. According to solar weather experts, there is only 20 to 30 minutes warning from the time we predict a solar storm that may affect us to the time it actually does. This is simply not enough time to implement procedures that will adequately protect the grid. Furthermore, these predictions are only accurate 1 out of 3 times. This places a crushing dilemma on industry, who must decide whether or not to heed the warning, with the knowledge that a wrong decision, either way, could result in the loss of thousands or even millions of lives and massive legal ramifications beyond expression. Mr. Chairman and members, we are now 65 years into the nuclear age, and the ominous intersection of jihadist terrorism and nuclear proliferation has been inexorably and relentlessly hurtling toward America and the free world for decades. But when we add the dimension of asymmetric electromagnetic pulses to the equation, we face a menace that may represent the gravest short-term threat to the peace and security of the human family in the world today. Certainly there are those who believe that the likelihood of terrorists or rogue states obtaining nuclear weapons and using them in an EMP attack is remote, and it may be a reasonable conclusion for the moment. But in the recent events of the Arab Spring, which our intelligence apparatus did not foresee, it shows us that regimes can change very quickly. If terrorists or rogue states do acquire nuclear weapons, hardening our electric grid would immediately become a desperate national priority. However, that process will take several years, and while a regime change only takes a few weeks, a missile launch only takes a few minutes. I know we have pictures of New York and Washington, but we still want to keep them around for a while. Yeah. And I think that it's wise to extend that to the transmission lines. Again, my primary purpose here is to try to focus as narrowly as I can on maintaining the base electric grid, because if that goes down, you know, our cybersecurity issues are no longer an issue because we don't have computer systems. We don't have the electricity to run them. And it might behoove the committee to consider a possibility of sending the Grid Act over as it is, and in a separate version just addressing the EMP issue in case there is the issue where the Senate can't come together on exactly how they want to do the cybersecurity. But I emphasize one last time that the cybersecurity issue is absolutely critical. I visited the Palo Verde nuclear power plant in Arizona. It's just outside my district. It's the largest one in the nation. And we had a hacker that was 2 strokes away from being able to go in and begin to monkey with the reactor itself. The fact that we are now 100% vulnerable means that we should start securing our electric infrastructure now. Indeed, by reducing our vulnerability, we may reduce the likelihood that terrorists or rogue states would attempt such an attack in the first place. Thankfully, Mr. Chairman and members, there is a moment in the life of nearly every problem when it is big enough to be seen by responsible, reasonable people, and still small enough to be solved. You and I live in that moment when there still may be time for the free world to address and mitigate the vulnerability that naturally occurring or weaponized EMP represents to the mechanisms of our civilization. Your actions today to protect America may gain you no fame or fanfare in the annals of history. However, it may happen that in your lifetime, a natural or man-made event so big has an effect so small that none but a few will recognize the disaster that was averted. And for the sake of our children and future generations, I pray it happens exactly that way. Thank you, and God bless you all.